Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Thanks for tuning in. And DC TechNet is your own channel, so do like, share and subscribe to the channel. And let's see what we have today. Today we are going to discuss on a group policy exceptions, and today will be the part 1 in this series. So let's dive in and let's see what we have today. So first and foremost, we will understand what are exceptions in general with examples. Then we will understand group policy exceptions or exceptions in our group policy. Then we will understand one of the exceptions called as enforced, and we will conclude our session with some demos. So let's get started. So what are exceptions in general? So a person or thing that is excluded from a general statement or does not follow a rule or a policy. An exception is something that is left out or not done on purpose. An exception is, an exception to a rule or policy does not follow that particular policy. An instance that does not conform to a rule or generalization, and an exception refers to a specific condition that deviates from the standard rule or norm. So this is a bookish definition of exception. So let's see some of the day-to-day examples in our everyday life for exceptions. We are surrounded by exceptions, by the way. So these are just some of the examples I have taken up. Let's say not stopping except emergency, no stopping except emergency, disabled parking only. So what are these? These are all exceptions in our real life. For example, again, no admissions without permission. So again, that's one of the exceptions in our real life, day-to-day life. So let us understand exceptions in our group policy now. Now, before understanding exceptions in our group policy, we must understand how the group policies are processed, or we must understand group policy processing order and group policy precedence. So we have a video on group policy processing order and group policy precedence, and I will leave a link in the description. So if you don't understand how group policies are processed and how the group policy precedents work, it will be very difficult for you to understand the exceptions in group policies. So I will always recommend you to watch those videos first and then come back to this video. So there are 4 exceptions in a group policy, namely enforced, block inheritance, group policy loopback processing, and filtering. And there are 2 types of filtering we can use, and that is security filtering and WMI filtering. So these are the 4 exceptions in group policies: enforced, block inheritance, group policy loopback processing, and filtering. 2 types of filters: security filtering and WMI filtering. And today we are only focusing on enforced, the first one. That's it. So first of all, let us understand enforced as an exception in our group policy. So when a policy is enforced, the settings in that policy cannot be overridden by any other policy. So it's no override. We cannot any other if there is a conflict, the policy which is enforced will always win. So when a policy is marked as enforced, its the specification standard firm without possibly being overridden by any conflicting policies. So once a policy is set to enforced, its parameters become immune to alterations or superseding actions from any other policy. So in a nutshell, if a policy is enforced, the settings in that policy cannot be overridden by any other policy if in the situation of conflict. So let's take an example over here, the real life example in our Active Directory, how the things work. So this is a typical OU structure in our Active Directory, and let's say there are 6 policies applied at or linked at different levels. Policy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and policy 1 is enforced, so it's not default, it is enforced. We have forced that policy, so all the settings in policy 1 will be forced on all the OUs under that particular OU on which the policy is linked. So in the situation of conflict, what will happen is the settings in policy 1 will override any setting which is in the conflict in any other policy. Let it be in policy 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6, any other policy. So this is what enforced does. It will force the settings, okay, and it will override all the other settings in the situation of conflict. Okay, so a good administrator will always make sure that there is no conflict in our policy settings. If there is a conflict and if you enforce a policy, this is how the mechanism works. I hope you have understood this concept. So if you have not understood, request you to please drop in a comment. So I will again create a new video only on how the enforcement works. So let's jump on to our labs and we'll configure group policy enforcement. Welcome to the labs. Now we have logged on to our London DC and we have opened up Group Policy Management Console. So let us expand the EMEA OU and UK and London. Users. So under users we have business users, general admins, HR, IT admins, vendors, etc. So let's expand business users and accounts. So if you highlight accounts OU, you will see over here on the right hand pane, you will see there are 8 policies altogether which are applied on the accounts OU. So the users in the accounts OU will be affected by these 8 policies. And if you observe over here, the policy which is linked at the domain level is right at the end. The precedence is very low or the lowest. So as I said in this video, I request everyone to watch the group policy precedence and the group policy processing order video before watching this particular video. So right now we have not enforced anything. This is the default behavior. So just to brief you, the processing order is LSDOU and the group policy precedence is exactly the opposite. LSDOU stands for the local policies will be executed, then the site level, then the say domain level, and then the OU level. So the OU level policies has the highest precedence. If you see over here, there is only one policy which is linked to the accounts OU, and that is policy 7. So this policy 7 has the highest precedence, that is number 1. See over here at the top, if you observe over here, and then at the OU just above accounts is business users. So then we have business users, then there are 2 policies to the users container or to the users OU, and then the London OU, then UK EMEA, and that's we have our domain. Now what we'll do is we will enforce one of our policies. So let's see, let us enforce the default domain policy which is linked to the OU. So it's very easy to enforce a policy. Simply right click on the policy and select enforced. So if you see over here, after enforcing the policy, you will see a lock over there. So let us refresh the screen over here and see. Perfect. So now the entire precedence has changed now. Earlier the default domain policy was at the end, now it's right at the top. So any say settings will override all the other settings which are there in any other policy over here, and you can also see that this policy has been enforced over here. So this is how the enforcement works. Now what will happen? I hope you have understood this enforcement. It's very simple. Let me just say remove the enforcement and refresh the screen again. So I'll right click, I'll just uncheck enforced, and again right click, and I will refresh the screen. So it's back to normal now. See over here, default domain policy is right at the end with the lowest precedence. Now what we'll do is we will enforce 2 policies and see which policy has the higher say precedence. So again let me enforce default domain policy. Let me refresh the screen again, and let me enforce the policy, let's say policy 4. Let me enforce this policy 4. Okay, now let me refresh the screen again. Perfect. Now see over here, the policy which is enforced at the top, okay, will have the higher precedence than the policy which is enforced in the say in the later part of the OU. So if I enforce policy 1 over here, policy 1 will have a higher precedence over policy 4, and say default domain policy will have higher precedence over policy 1 and policy 4. So let me right click and enforce policy 1 as well, and let me right click and click on refresh. See over here, so the default domain policy has the highest precedence, then policy 1, it's linked to the say upper side of the OU, so the upper container, the container which is above, and then we have the users container over here. So this is how group policy enforcement works. So let's summarize what we have say seen today's session. So we have understood what is an exception in general. We have understood exceptions in group policies. We have understood one of the exceptions named enforced, and we have also configured say group policy enforcement. So thanks for joining today, and if you feel this channel is helping you to learn anything new, please share this video in your technical community and do subscribe to the channel, and have a great day.